Most people take a boiler for granted, really. However, if you look at it, it provides all your heating and hot water needs. So whether it's in the morning when you're getting up and the boiler automatically clicks on through the program at 6 o'clock in the morning and heats your home, through to your shower, through to washing, through to the washing machine and dishwasher, then a consumer relies an awful amount on the boiler and its usage, but it is really taken for granted. The history, I suppose, originally going back to the 19th century, the first form of boiler in the household was a geyser, which was really a product that was heated hot water through pipes by an integral burner, and it provided heating to the house. However, what it didn't provide was a flue, and often the situation was where you had carbon monoxide build-up, which isn't great and obviously can lead to fatalities. Most people started to have central heating systems within their homes in the 60s and early 70s. A lot of people remember the traditional back boilers that were fed by solid fuel, whether it was coal or wood, and often positioned, nearly always positioned in the kitchen. Then it really moved on to more larger floor standing units, many of which were connected to not only a cold water tank in the loft, which supplied you with the cold feed, but also a hot water cylinder that was normally situated in the airing cupboard. Today, that has changed. You still get a hot water cylinder and airing cupboard, largely on properties that are like 3 to 4 bedrooms or larger. But the size of the boilers have actually changed and the technology has changed. So whereas in the 80s, when you had combination boilers and system boilers starting to come into the market, they were a lot smaller and allowed people to fit them, as now, between kitchen cupboards or in a utility room or in a small cupboard in the house. The boiler technology really changed again in the 80s within Europe and largely within the 90s in the UK, where technology in terms of condensing boilers came in. In the UK, legislation changed in 2005, which meant that people, in most cases, had to have a condensing boiler fitted. Today, in the UK, about 60% of properties have condensing. The other 40% still have the old conventional floor standing or oil boilers, for example.
Well, basically, our old boiler had packed up and it needed a spare part, which wasn't available in the UK. And it was going to cost us an awful lot of money to repair, almost as much as a new boiler. So we decided to go for the new boiler instead, didn't we?
Yeah, as I say, we did some research on the internet. And we were just looking for, a new combi high efficiency boiler.
This is a typical combination boiler that you'll see in any property anywhere in the UK. Underneath the boiler you will have your isolation valves for the heating, the hot water inlet, the hot water outlet and the gas. There'll also be a condense trap somewhere on the boiler to get rid of any excess condense. When we drop the front panel, you've got access to the working and the controls. You've got your basic on and off switch. You can also alter the temperature on the heating and the hot water at any time. It's also got a preheat function on there, so the hot water is preheated before it comes out to the tap. And then you've also got all your entry into your parameters and your engineer's settings.
A lot of properties, most probably properties that are 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, etc., and larger, will have a hot water tank. The majority of flats and houses up to 2 bedrooms now will have either a combination or a system boiler. So a combination boiler will literally provide you with hot water on demand and heating on demand. The system boiler will still be linked to a hot water tank and still provide hot water throughout the house. The main impact has been in fuel saving. So a condensing boiler, in simple terms, uses the heat from the waste flue gases to actually heat the water within the boiler. Therefore, you get a saving of about 20% on your energy costs a year.
With the price of fuel, gas, electric these days always rising, you need something that's going to help lower the bills. So, that's why we went with a boiler, a high efficiency boiler.
Take the front of the boiler off, front cover. Inside, you'll have typically you'll have a fan that helps modulate the gas into the burner. You've got a gas valve and a gas ignition module, a central heating pump and a flow switch. Basically the fan will start up at high RPM. It will then open the gas valve and suck the gas through the fan, modulate into the burner itself. When the burner is working at the top, you've got roughly about 1200 degrees. By the time it works its way through the heat exchanger, you've got roughly 50 degrees before it goes out to the flue.
If you're looking at savings on an average house, you'll be looking at savings around about £200 to £250 a year. If you look at the cost of fuel to the supplier, it's only gone up about 3 or 4% in the last 4 or 5 years, but to the homeowner it's gone up over 20%.
I imagine everybody's always looking for ways of trying to reduce their bills. And trying to be more environmentally friendly and stuff like that, because it's really important this day and age to be that way.
When the burner is lit at 1200 degrees at the top, it works its way through the fractal design in the heat exchanger, and it sucks out as much of the waste energy as possible before it goes out to the flue. On older boilers, the burner used to fire, it used to go through the heat exchanger, and you'd have possibly 70-80 degrees going out to the flue. On a high efficiency boiler, the burner will fire, it will suck all the excess waste energy out of the heat exchanger rather than going out the flue. So going out the flue you might have only 30 degrees. Hence you're saving money.
One of the key targets for the government is actually to reduce the CO2 levels within the UK and the amount of gas that is emitted and bring it down so that they can actually hit their targets that are set. If you take domestic boilers and commercial boilers, then they are one of the main emitters of CO2.
When you look at an older boiler that would have been probably cast iron with an atmospheric burner, you've probably got 50% of your energy is going up through the flue. When you look at a high efficiency boiler, whereas the wastage is being reused again, you're probably looking at 88% plus efficiency. So you've got over a 30% saving on your energy consumption. Boilers have become more efficient over the last 20 years, mainly because of the materials used and the electronic processes that they go through. Boilers are a lot smaller, yet they've got more components in. This is due to the electronics within the boiler and the transfer of heat through different materials. So the older boilers would have a cast iron heat exchanger, whereas most modern boilers you'll have a stainless steel or an aluminium, and aluminium being the best heat transfer material about. This particular heat exchanger is a double back-to-back heat exchanger. It was designed over 18 years ago. Basically it's double condensation. It condensates in hot water as well as heating mode 100% of the time. It's fully aluminium. It's poured at 700 degrees at 400 bar pressure in less than 1/500th of a second. We've
noticed actually that the heating, since we've had the new boiler, heats the house a lot quicker than what our old boiler did. And again, same with the hot water. The hot water that comes through to the taps is a lot quicker than what our old boiler used to be able to do.
And hotter.
And a lot hotter.
Much hotter.
Yeah.
And the boiler is so quiet. It's such a quiet boiler. I have to check sometimes to see if it's on there.
It's actually working.
Ever since, obviously in 2005, we had the change in the legislation to condensing boilers, and in 2010, manufacturers cannot sell a product that is under 88% efficient in terms of the heating and hot water.
So What's interesting in the UK is that, as we all know, our fuel bills are increasing quite substantially, and that is having an impact on people's behaviours. So we are noticing people being more interested and more aware of the issue. So they're, maybe they're running their dishwasher when it's full now instead of going earlier, same with the washing machine. I think we're still a little ways behind other countries such as Germany or the Scandinavian countries, but we're catching up really fast. And in part that's due to the cost savings available, and in part, as I say, it's also due to our increasing awareness of the environmental issues. We're all, it's in the news a great deal about the issue of global warming, and everybody wants to do their bit.
Manufacturers are always looking at ways in which they can actually improve the efficiency of their products. If you put that in line with what the government legislation and government targets are in terms of their CO2 targets, etc., and also the fact that energy bills are increasing every year, then anything that the manufacturer can do to actually make their products more efficient and therefore save the homeowner money is obviously putting them in a winning position.
There's meters, smart meters in the home, and in 2020 regulations are coming in which say that'll be spread across all homes. And that will really give you a better feel for when your household is consuming energy. And it's not always when you think. So at night, for example, when things are on standby, you don't necessarily notice. But with metering, that'll become a bit more visible, and you have the opportunity to save there.
Technology is changing how people use their energy. For example, some boilers now, you can actually control your boiler remotely. So therefore, via an app or a smartphone or by the Wi-Fi, you can actually, for example, turn the heating on and off. You can change the temperature. And also there's situations whereby in social housing, where they can actually look into a boiler and actually understand how the boiler is working, how much gas it's using, if all the components are working correctly. Therefore, if a fault does occur, the maintenance team can go out and they can fix the boiler first time. If you take people that have special requirements or are in a vulnerable situation, then it allows either siblings or friends, etc., to be able to monitor that the heating is on within the house of an elderly relative, for example, or it also allows a social housing organisation to ensure that their tenants have the correct amount of heating and hot water and that they're providing a duty of care.
The benefit of the RF thermostat is that you can move it from room to room if needed. With a fixed thermostat, it's in one particular place. Hence the wiring to the RF stat, there is none, so it's cheaper to install and it's cheaper to buy.
Now certainly within the social housing market and the fact that obviously a lot of people are now affected or classified as fuel poor, then any saving that they can make and show on the heating and hot water bills is obviously of interest to them.
All heating systems have got to come up to a certain standard with thermostatic radiator valves, but the thermostat will only sense the temperature in the room it's actually in. So the rest of the house with the thermostatic valves will shut down once that room reaches temperature, but the RF thermostat will actually turn the whole system off when it's totally up to temperature.
If you take a conventional 3-bedroom detached house that has an old boiler fitted, a non-condensing boiler, then the average household will pay between £1,200 to £1,400 a year in terms of the heating and hot water bill. If it has a condensing boiler fitted, then it would be in the region of about £750 to £950 a year.
For us personally, I mean, we've had the boiler just under 12 months. It's saving on your bills is where you notice.
Another advantage of using technology in terms of home management, if you like, and with a boiler is, for example, a service company. Often people get frustrated where an engineer may come out to look at a fault where a boiler's broken down, only to have to go away again and get the part and then return. If you have remote management in place, then you can actually identify the fault prior to visiting so that the service engineer can actually turn up and install and fix the boiler first time. If you take, for example, a social housing organisation as well, that obviously needs to ensure that its tenants are looked after, but it also has its own running costs, therefore an advantage of being able to fix the boiler first time, especially if it's, say, 20 or 30 miles away from where the offices are, is that it will save a lot of energy in terms of fuel for the vehicle, it saves time, it means that the engineer can actually do more visits in a day, and therefore overall it would save money for the local authority or social housing organisation. Right, there are lots of ways in which people can save energy in a home, not from just turning down the thermostat or having shorter showers, but also in terms of insulating the home correctly, whether that's loft or cavity wall insulation. And also simple things like not overfilling the kettle, because the boiling of a kettle actually uses an awful lot of energy.
I do reckon that we use less hot water, definitely. If you imagine you're filling a bowl of water to wash it up, if it's coming through hotter,
you're not wasting more water.
You're not wasting the water trying to get it hot at the start.
It's really important to understand every household is a little bit different. And it's really important to look around your household and examine, right, what are the big hotspots? What's the equipment that uses the most? And also, how often do I use them? Because it's not just, you might have a washing machine, but you only use it once a month. So really, not a big deal. So you really need to examine what's the situation across your household. Now, boiling water can be a significant impact, and there's a number of reasons for that. One of which is that, for example, if you're using a kettle, you might overfill it. Another issue about water is that the associated energy costs. So if you think about boiling water on the hob for your vegetables, well, maybe you leave the lid off, and that's consuming more gas or electricity because of that.
You put an extra layer on if need be, if you're feeling cold. Don't use the heating unnecessarily. Don't
leave the back door open just because the dog wants to go in and out. make its mind up.
I think anything you can do to save energy is going to reduce your bills.
It's got to.
So yeah, it all helps.
The impact you can have as an individual, that's good, and it's certainly there, but it's the example you set for others, whether that's your family, whether that's your colleagues, whether that's the person at the company you deal with, you can have an influence there. And there's still a certain amount of reluctance. There's a certain amount of, oh, well, I don't want to bother people, and I don't want to say, I think this situation is wasting water or wasting electricity. But I think that's changing. And I think, as you say, we can have a huge impact.
We're very mindful about the lights, aren't we? And switching switches off.
You're always being told off, aren't you?
Yeah.
Turn the light off. Yeah. Turn the light off.
But no, we are quite mindful of not wasting electricity or wasting energy. Yeah. Same with the heating. If we we'd rather not have the heating on if we can help it.
Put an extra layer on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the loft insulated, cavity wall insulation. So we do our best.
One of the key targets for the government is actually to reduce the CO2 levels within the UK and the amount of gas that is emitted and bring it down so that they can actually hit their targets that are set. If you take domestic boilers and commercial boilers, then they are one of the main emitters of CO2.
I think from my point of view, I think that the way we treat the planet has got to be a concern, and if we've got a boiler installed in our home that is more efficient, uses less gas, we're paying less for it. If we're using less gas, the planet needs to produce less gas. So I think that's quite important that we try and treat the planet that way.
Energy efficiency is important for the future because obviously fossil fuels are a finite resource. People are always looking at ways in which they can save money on their home heating and hot water bills. And if you look at global warming, as we said earlier, the government has targets in terms of reducing emissions.